You are listening to the Success Diaries podcast. I'm your hostess, Bri Seeley, a creative growth strategist and top entrepreneur coach on Google. The Success Diaries is your invitation to do success on your own terms. Every episode features interviews with entrepreneurs and change makers around the world living their success on their terms. Today on the podcast, we welcome Cate Luzio. Cate is the founder and CEO of Luminary, the premier collaboration hub for women who are passionate about professional development and expanding their networks in New York City. Cate has over 20 years of leadership experience in financial services. She holds a master's degree in international relations from Georgetown University and a bachelor's in political science from the University of Maryland. She's a global traveler, having visited more than 114 countries. Cate also sits on the advisory board of Girls Inc. New York City, as well as the national board of WaterAid. In 2019, Cate was named to Inc. magazine's Female Founders 100 list. All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Success Diaries. Bri Seeley here, and I am here with a woman who is fucking incredible. She is the owner of the co-working space where I go in Manhattan several times a week, and someone that I just immediately connected with when we met. So, hi, Cate.
Hi, how are you?
I'm so good. I'm so excited to be chatting with you.
Likewise.
You and I have had a few conversations about what success looks like for us, and so really excited to, one, kick off the new podcast with your interview, and two, just talk to you about how this plays out, because you've had quite the story.
Yeah.
And you are in this new chapter of your life, and I think it's exciting to talk about. So, start off the way we always will for every episode. What is your definition of success?
I think over time my definition has changed. I think it stems from growing up in and I don't mean this in a negative way, a very competitive household. I had two brothers, one on each side. We were all very competitive in athletics as well as academics. For me, I think growing up and then getting into my first job, and as my career accelerated, particularly in the banking sector, it was always about that next level. And of course, that's great. Once you attain that one level, you strive to get to the next. I think there was absolutely a part of that was financially motivated, particularly in banking. But as I developed as a leader over time, it became much more around the business impact that I was making, both on how the business was growing and the revenues generated, but also the people. And so making sure that I had successful people that I was developing and bringing up, and that I could say, here, they are now in these roles. And a lot of what I did on the side of my desk was around women and talented women in the workforce, again, particularly in banking. So in starting Luminary and looking across all of the workforce and not just focused on one industry, for me, it's now about the impact that I'm making, that the business that I'm running is making, and that we're actually making real change in this world versus it's just about my individual success.
Yeah, and I also find, too, looking at kind of that old model that you were living by, it's almost like we're constantly striving for something, and then the second we get that thing, we don't even enjoy it. We're just immediately then looking towards the next thing. And so it's like there's this constant moving target, and we never actually get to be in the fullness of our success by that model.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. So when in the finance world, once you attain a managing director title, that's sort of one of the most senior levels. And when I got that, I was about 34, so pretty young. And I remember we had an induction or an orientation for new managing directors. And one of the senior people came in and said, "You think you've made it, but you haven't. Right now you have to work that much harder. And so enjoy this day because we're celebrating your success, but that's it, right? And so keep moving on, keep moving up, keep doing what you're doing, and keep learning." And I think that's, for me, been the sort of, I guess, definition of success for me has always been about, am I making impact? Am I growing and learning and challenging myself? And then when I'm not, then it's time to move on.
Yeah. Awesome. So now that you have kind of stepped into this, new chapter in your life, do you feel like that kind of old striving model of success has gone away?
Oh, no.
No?
No, it's actually probably, of course, my goal is to create a very, sustainable and profitable company. I didn't take on any investor money for many reasons, but one, I wanted to control the destiny, right? And I wanted to have, control ownership and have all of the equity so that I can listen to our community and make decisions based on the feedback we're getting from them versus an investor that I'm trying to maximize a return on an investment. But I think it's actually, I don't want to say it's worse now. I think because it's all on my shoulders, it's very hard to be happy with the little gains that you make. And I say that because I'm being completely honest. It's hard as an entrepreneur. It's lonely. I don't have a co-founder. I have a great community and support network of a lot of other founders around me that I get to talk to, and certainly our members. But I think you're as my personality is that I'm constantly striving. And whether that's in my job or the things that I do personally, like I'm on two boards, is making those as successful as possible as well. I don't think I'll ever change that, as my definition of what I'm striving for has changed.
Got it. But I know about you that you still take time to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And you still take time to kind of revel in what you've created and like really, not only honor yourself, but your team. So how do you kind of celebrate those little milestones?
I think a big part of it is my team, right? Everyone, when you look at the press that we've had, and we've been really fortunate, a lot of it is, attached to the founder story. And that's normal and it's going to happen. But I always say to my team, none of this happens without them. And I don't mean mechanically the space, how it works, but it's really how the community has been built and continues to build and evolve. None of that happens without them. And it's not just about Cate. And so the way we celebrate is, again, little ways. As we every week we have one team meeting. As someone who spent 22 years in corporate America, I was really tired of conference calls and meetings. So we have one. And the first thing that we do in every single weekly meeting is a personal highlight that you want to share and a member highlight that you want to share. And it's great because it allows people to open up and you get to know each other. We're a small team, so that's already happening. But then to be able to share those little member highlights that no one else knows about or sees, I think for us just builds on that community angle. And I think now we're at a point where people could just go on and on because they don't just have one member highlight. They're like, wait, I have 5. It's like, wait, you can only have one, so pick one. And so I think for me that's sort of how we celebrate. And also kind of what you were saying before we started is we are a family, and so we welcome our members into that family. And so again, just hanging around for a happy hour or even off-site, a lot of our members will participate in our team activities, or a few of the members will go out with some of our team. That's a great way to just sort of say this is something special that we're building.
Yeah, I love it. So I want to touch back on something you said a little bit ago. And actually, so as we're recording this, it's the end of February. And I just put a post on Instagram yesterday, which I know you saw, about how a lot of people come to me and say, oh, in order for me to start a business, I need to have an investor. And, I've started now 3 businesses without investment. And now you're starting this one, which has a lot more startup capital than any of my businesses have had. So when you hear someone say like, well, I can't get started until, and it's very unlikely that someone's going to get capital as a startup, what are your tips or what are your thoughts about investment and capital and starting a business?
So I think the first thing is understanding the business and the financial model. So in order to think that you need capital, whether it's on your own, an investor, a bank loan, whatever that is, you better understand how much you need. And you can't know that until you've actually written a real business plan and a P&L, a profit and loss, so that you understand what's coming in and what's going out. And what does that mean? pre-revenue? What does that mean during? And sort of what is your 3 to 5 year game plan? I am a very big advocate on creating that. I ran big businesses for many years, and I always had a business plan, even in a big company, right? I didn't create a business plan for JP Morgan or where I was working at HSBC because someone was challenging me and was not going to give me money. Absolutely, I need an investment into those businesses. It's the same if you're running your own business. And so if you don't know actually how much you need, then how can you say you need an investor? I think on the flip side, once you know how much you need, it's understanding the different options that you may have out there before you go and say, I absolutely need an investor. So are you putting skin in the game and funding some of it yourself? Do you have a business credit card, which can give you a bit of working capital? You can crowdfund, and there are some amazing platforms out there, including I Fund Women, that's focused on women-owned businesses. There are grants. There are organizations like We NYC that's just city-funded program focusing on getting women capital and different types of loans. And then there's clearly, going into the investor route. I think it really depends on what are the pros and the cons of that, right? Are you willing to let go of some equity of your company in order to take on an investor? Are you willing to pay, the rates that a bank offers if you can get a loan, or even a friends and family, right? That getting money never comes without strings. And so if you can do it yourself, 61% of women-owned businesses in the United States bootstrap.
Yeah.
Right? And the average loan a woman-owned business takes in this country is around $40,000. These aren't huge numbers. But if you have a huge upfront capital and you can't fund it yourself, then look at the different options. Don't automatically think you have to go to one investor.
Yeah. I think a lot of things that, like some things I've never shared, when I was in fashion, you have an entry fee into every single one of the runway shows that you do. I never once paid for any one of my runway show entry fees.
Yeah.
And I would find ways I did a few crowdfunding things. I would get sponsors on.
Right.
So if a shoe brand wanted to put their stuff on my runway, it was X amount of money. If, sunglass brand wanted to put their stuff on my runway, it was X amount of money. And so one thing I always like to tell entrepreneurs is just be creative, because taking on an investor is not as great as everyone makes it out to be, and it's super, super, super difficult.
Yeah, and you're sort of tied to that. It's the way I look at it, and I know, listen, a lot of people are successful out there when they raise capital, but the way I look at it is it's a partner, right? It's almost as if you're having a co-founder and you've got many founders in the business. They may not be as involved in the day-to-day, but they're certainly going to be involved in how much you're growing, how much you're spending. And if you get a big chunk, you're going to ask to spend that faster and grow faster. And this whole idea of growth at any cost, and we've seen so many examples of late, is, again, as a banker, there didn't, in the old days, I say old, I'm not that old, but you had to be profitable before you could go and do an IPO. Now people do an IPO to become profitable or to raise more cash. And I think it's responsible to an extent. I think you have to have a great board. I think you have to have great investors if you're going that route. And again, I know I self-funded, and this is a lot of capital because it's a physical space and we have a lot of fixed costs. But that was a decision I made after spending 22 years in corporate America and saving a lot of bonuses and money and betting on myself versus betting on someone else.
Yeah, I love that. I talk a lot about how the risk to move forward is always smaller than the risk to stay where you are.
Yes.
And a lot of that comes with betting on yourself rather than anything else. So one last question before we wrap up. I know that you put a lot of energy out there every week, and you're always super high vibe and positive and radiant. Even you may not feel it, but you always look it. What do you feel like is just one kind of little secret that you have about how you stay in that vibe, moving forward in the momentum, focusing on the end goal rather than all the kind of daily minutia?
So I think you really have to, and I probably, when I first started Luminary, which isn't that long ago, right? We've only been around over a year, but you have to take yourself out of the situation every once in a while. It's good for your self-care and for your brain and for your well-being, but also it gets you away from the company and allows you to think more creatively. So for me, I know when I'm at that point, and I have to sort of just take myself out of it. That could just be even a weekend of just not picking up my computer, not trying as best as I can to not think about the company, but also not focusing so much all the time on the competition and everything that's out there, right? I recently got the opportunity to spend the day in Oprah's 2020 Vision Tour. And one of the biggest things that I took away from that was run your own race. Right? And so we're all running the race. And if we focus on ourselves, then for me, that was a huge eye-opener. I don't think I had really thought about that. So I have to constantly check myself and know that also, to your earlier point, taking those little wins and those little celebrations, they actually mean a heck of a lot to other people. So I should revel in those too.
Yeah. I love that. There's a Jay-Z line. I'm a huge Jay-Z fan. And there's a line in one of his songs that says, I don't know who you think you're chasing because I'm already at my finish line with my flag waving.
Yeah.
And that's one of the ones that I kind of use for myself to just like eye on the prize, like don't focus on what anyone else is doing. Just like keep my vision top of mind and like that's it.
No, absolutely. And as Oprah said, and I love this as well, your cup runneth over. Like be so full of yourself, and not in a derogatory way, that your cup runneth over. And I think that's what we all have to focus on, ourselves, not everyone else.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Excited to be on this, and of course, love that you're a part of our community, Bri.
Not to like plug Luminary a ton, but like joining Luminary in August. I just moved to New York in April, and I joined here in August.
Yeah.
And it was one of the best decisions I've made. One, it gets me out of the house, which for anyone that knows me knows that I don't like leaving my house. And I did not move to New York to stay in my house.
Right.
But also to just like the energy of being here and like being around other inspired visionary women and just like, you know, being around you and your team. And it is such a blessing to have something like this in my life that I don't think I'd be in the positive mental state I am in New York without Luminary.
Well, that makes me happy. It's the true ecosystem that's working, right? And all of us sort of, whether you're a corporate, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're a teacher, just working together to raise each other up, but then also make and help each other be true successes and whatever definition of success that is.
Yeah. So if people want to find you or follow your journey or anything, where's the best place to do that?
Yeah, so my Instagram, Twitter, etc. are at Cate Luzio with a C, CateLuzio, and at Be a Luminary.
They have a great Instagram. Go follow them. Thank you again.
Thanks, Bri.
Thank you so much for joining me for this week's episode of the Success Diaries. A few last things I want to share with you. I want to know what is in your success diaries. I want you to share with me how you're living your definition of success this week on Instagram by tagging at Bri Seeley. And if you're not sure what's in your success diaries or what success means to you, hop on over to my website, briseeley.com/success. You can grab your very own success diary and enroll in my 6-week course to investigate what your definition of success is. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. I have some really incredible interviews coming up for you. So cheers to you doing you and succeeding beyond your wildest dreams.